Hey everybody, welcome back to the VMP Performance channel. I'm Justin, and on the dyno next to me is my 2012 Shelby GT500. This car has our VMP Gen3R supercharger on top of it. Now, my car is still a stock engine. We've been doing videos on it for probably the past year or two. We never got a chance to do a video on the VMP Gen3R when it came out, so I thought this would be a really good opportunity to take you through some different pulley sizes and the power differences between them, so you can see where the Gen3R starts with the largest pulley and where it ends up with the smallest pulley. In this process, we have done some things to set this test up for success. We're measuring boost right here with a boost sensor. We have loaded the car up with C16 race fuel, and that is going to allow us to lock the timing in and run a good moderate amount of timing and have the timing curve completely consistent across all of these different pulley sizes and boost levels. Just something that we can do as a tuner to only show the difference in the supercharger and the boost, take all of the tuning variables just out of the picture altogether. Now, I believe I did mention, or may not have mentioned, that the car does have a JLT 123mm cold air. It's got our VMP 163R throttle body. That's the combo that we most often recommend and sell if you're shooting for higher horsepower numbers. Once again, that's going to take any consistencies out as far as different throttle body sizes or different cold air sizes. We're really only going to be testing the different pulley sizes and boost levels today on this VMP Gen3R. Gonna make a hit. Dyno run and see what we got. I'm starting all of our dyno pulls at 2,000 RPM and finishing right below 7,000 RPM. So the Gen3R on the 3-inch upper pulley, 22 degrees of timing on race gas, made 702 rear wheel horsepower and 623 rear wheel torque. That horsepower number is completely off the charts. The torque number is on the lower side, but remember, we're only running a 3-inch upper pulley, so this Gen3R is not even being spun at all. That is a great number. It's what I'd expect to see. Let's dive a little bit deeper into how we got that number. If you look at this boost curve here, you can see why torque is lower. At 3,000 RPM, we're only making 12 pounds. Now, the 3-inch upper pulley, that's the size of the stock supercharger pulley on a GT500 that came stock on this car. So the only benefit we're getting right now is the larger, more efficient 2650 rotors, the better inlet, better throttle body, and of course the tuning. As we ramp up in engine speed, you can see the blower really starts to take off. By 4,000 RPM, we're at 14 pounds of boost. By 6,000 RPM, we are at 16.8 pounds of boost. 6,250, we're at 17.5 pounds of boost. Now, 6,250 is an interesting number because that's the stock rev limiter on a GT500. That is where the engine starts to kind of level off. We're making 684 rear wheel horsepower. It wasn't until 6,800 RPM that we made the 700 wheel number, and the supercharger gained another couple pounds of boost. Just because we are so under spinning it, the engine RPM is now kind of catching up with blower RPM and getting that blower in its peak efficiency range. Let me flip over to the data logger and we will look at the tuning parameters. So I just zoomed in on the watt section of the pull right here, and we can see that the timing ramps in to 22.5 degrees, locks in at 22 degrees at high RPM. Our intake air temps are steady the whole pull at about 120 to 124, 126 at the very end. So only a 4 to 6 degree rise in air temps the entire pull. That's perfect. This blower is doing everything it needs to do right now. It's performing great. We'll throw some of this stuff up on the screen for you to see in a little bit higher resolution, and we'll get to swapping to the next pulley and see what we get next. horsepower and 668 rear wheel torque. The torque came up like crazy. Like I said, once you start spinning the Gen3R, it's gonna make a lot more torque. 2.8 is actually the pulley that we recommend for 07 to 12 that you start with, and you can go as aggressive as 2.7 or 2.6 on pump gas. Really only about 2.7 unless you're using an octane booster. So this is a very common setup. The car made 729 peak once again. At that 6250 RPM stock rev limiter, it made 710 rear wheel horsepower and just under 20 pounds of boost. That's about 25 rear wheel horsepower more than the 3.0 pulley at the same point. So we're getting 10 to 15 horsepower per pound of boost per 1/10 of an inch of pulley size, right in line with what we'd expect. Over here, the data logs look great. We're starting the run around 113 downstream. We're finishing around 120. Spark is locked in at 22 degrees. Air fuel's good. Everything's good. We'll throw these graphs up on the screen for you so you can see them in greater detail, and we'll go swap to the next pulley. I got that 2.5 pulley swapped on. I've got everything going. Data logger's going, dyno's going. I'm gonna be looking for a spark blowout issue now that we've added another pound of boost. Apparently that wasn't the problem. I don't know why the engine had a little bit of spark blowout on the previous run, but it made a ton of power. 782 rear wheel horsepower, 742 rear wheel torque. Apparently, whatever was into it, it got out of it and it's happy. I'm gonna be doing a couple more runs just to make sure it's consistent in that 780 range. I've ran this car up this high before with our older generation supercharger and some different fuel and the smallest pulley we make. We're only on a 2.5 upper right now. We're only on a 163R. This is awesome. But here, let me show you the graph. 782, 742. Definitely a much larger gain. I'm gonna bring up the data log and we're gonna look at that to try and ascertain what went on here. Our spark curve is clean, 22 degrees. Our air fuel is good. Our air temps are good. 108 starting point, 118 finishing point. Everything looks normal here. We'll throw up the dyno graph and the data logs on the screen so you can review them in a little bit better format than just looking at my screen. But this thing's doing awesome, and I'm gonna follow up with a couple more pulls to make sure that that wasn't just a fluke and that we've got a real accurate data set of the VMP Gen3R from a 3.0 down to a 2.5 pulley. So we're going for another pass with the 2.5 to see if we see the same or similar numbers as that awesome 782 run. Monitoring everything as usual. Engine's up to temp. Y bands are reading out. Time to go for it. That rev limiter comes up real quick. I'm actually going to leave the car rolling because right after I tell you what it made on this run, we're going to go for another pass. Here we go, 783, 734. It backed the run right up. We still got our data logger going. Okay, now on a back-to-back pass like that, you are going to see a little bit of fall off because of heat buildup. There's no way around it. This is 900 plus crank horsepower, but we still made 777 rear wheel horsepower and 724 rear wheel torque. We'll take a look at the data logs. On that first pull, we had an IET of 109 starting and finishing around 120, 122. Air, fuel, spark, everything looked good, locked in at 22 degrees. If we switch to down here to our second pull, see they're all in one run right here, then you can see our IET started higher and gained about 13, 14 degrees. Our spark was at 22, air fuel was good, everything was good. 3 back-to-back runs with a VMP Gen3R, a 2.5-inch pulley, making between 777 and 783 rear-wheel horsepower. That's freaking awesome. You got to see what the VMP Gen3R made with a 3-inch upper pulley, 702 rear-wheel horsepower, a 2.8-inch upper pulley, 729 rear-wheel horsepower, and then when we put the 2.5-inch pulley on, it made 782 rear-wheel horsepower pretty consistently, because we made several runs back-to-back and only saw a drop to 777 rear-wheel horsepower. The VMP Gen3R is a 2.65-liter Eaton TVS-based supercharger, but it does have Magnuson's patent-pending DFT technology that allows the port to be tuned for the intended operating range of the supercharger. And this is why our VMP and Magnuson 2.65 perform so incredibly well. When we started out with this dyno testing, we wanted to specifically disprove some claims from a competing manufacturer. Their website is littered with PDFs about how their twin screw technology is so much more advanced and outperforms TVS-based technology. So right over here on the table next to us, we have their complete system. Now, these pulleys were very, very hard to obtain. We actually had to have them custom made. We have a 3-inch upper pulley. This is a 2.8-inch upper pulley and a 2.5-inch upper pulley. So as you can see, we will be running this system with the exact same pulley sizes as the VMP Gen3R 265-liter against this 2.8-liter supercharger. We will be giving this supercharger the best opportunity possible. We've got their monoblade throttle body, which, by the way, is actually slightly bigger than our 163R throttle body, but that doesn't really matter, honestly, because the inlet shape is what gets the air into the rotors and makes the biggest difference. We've also got their 5-inch cold air system, very, very comparable to the VMP with the JLT 123mm system. This is really as apples to apples as we could get in a real-world situation on a real car with systems that fit under the stock hood. And I've got to put a big asterisk there. The VMP Gen3R fits under the stock hood. You can close it. There's no modifications. There's no drop motor mounts. There's no K-member spacers. This 2.8-liter system, since its inception 12 or so years ago, has required notching of the underhood X-brace or drop motor mounts or K-member spacers. So as we've continued to evolve and offer new products, we've kept things in mind like hood clearance and ease of installation, and most importantly, performance, whereas we have only seen continuing to throw a bigger hammer at the problem from the competing manufacturer. One of the things I wanted to talk about between these two different superchargers is the inlet system, specifically the throttle body and the turn behind the blower. The VMP Gen3R uses the stock throttle body bolt pattern, and we have our VMP 163R throttle body. So the stock throttle body bolt pattern, that's important because it takes a wide variety of throttle bodies. You can pick one that's appropriate for your power level and that your tuner is comfortable with. Everything from our twin blade series to our medium-sized mono blades and the big puppy right here, the 163R. Our inlet has a very refined swooping design. We take this right here and we funnel all the air right into the supercharger rotors. There's a lot going on here in a small package. Even though this is a stock throttle body bolt pattern, this opening's huge, this whole elbow is huge, and it does what it needs to do in terms of getting air into the supercharger. This system uses a 168mm throttle body. Now, 168 is misleading because it's just the width. It's not the height or any combination thereof. We got away from calling throttle bodies based on millimeter sizes unless it's a twin blade, because on a single blade it really doesn't tell you anything. So our throttle body sizing system is actually square inches. We know this throttle body is 17.7 square inches. The VMP 163R is 16.3. We went slightly smaller for a very, very specific reason. When you have an opening this big on the supercharger and you have to turn the air into the rotors, you run into huge roadblocks like this big hairpin turn. A good percentage of the throttle body opening is obstructed right here by this. We sized the VMP 163R throttle body to provide enough airflow, but not to drive your tuner nuts. It's not so huge that it's uncontrollable. It's not an on-off switch. It's very tunable and drivable, and that's specifically what we wanted to avoid when we designed the Gen3R. We did not want a big throttle body that was like a light switch. And with this system, you're forced to use a proprietary bolt pattern, a proprietary throttle body that your tuner may or may not care for, and even you as the driver may or may not care for. So this is a very purpose-built system that claims to be better technology, twin screw, yada yada yada, but we are going to show you on the dyno how it compares to the VMP Gen3R. All right, we got the 2.8 liter swapped on. We've got a 3-inch pulley, their complete air induction system with their 5-inch cold air and their 168 throttle body. I've loaded all the proper tuning parameters to account for the change for the cold air intake, and we're going to run it with the same amount of ignition timing and see what it does. We are data logging and monitoring boost, so we can compare that to the VMP Gen3R. Save that run. Ignition timing is just a smidge higher, about 1/10 of a degree. And for anyone that knows tuning and mass air transfer functions, this cold air is a little bit different than the JLT, so our calculated load is actually coming in lower than it was before, causing us to drop to a totally different cell where we don't have timing locked in. So I'm not going to call a couple tenths of a degree of timing a big difference. We're still on the largest pulley, but you can see the timing curve right here. So if anything, the 2.8 liter had a slight advantage, having a degree more around the torque peak, tapering off to around 22 degrees at the peak. While we're here, we'll talk about the air temps, starting at 109, finishing about 117, 118. Pretty normal for a low boost setup like this. Once again, air fuel and everything is good. So we've got the dyno graphs up here, and the 2.8 liter pretty consistently makes about half a pound, even a pound more boost than the Gen3R, given the same pulley size. And it is a little bit larger. It does displace a little bit more air with every single revolution. And with that air, it uses it pretty darn similarly to the VMP Gen3R. You're gonna see right here, 700, 695, we end up making a slightly different peak number, but these graphs pretty much overlay the whole way. The 2.8 liter, like I said, is taking more boost to make the same power as the Gen3R. At this stage of the game, neither of these superchargers is really working very hard. The 3-inch pulley is the same size pulley that comes on the stock GT500 supercharger, and it's only spinning about slightly faster than 2 times engine speed. So we're still only 15,000, 16,000 RPM total, and that really does not stress a supercharger design or really show us a whole lot about what it's capable of. What we are going to do next is start swapping pulleys and see how the other supercharger responds as we spin it faster. Alright, so we got our smaller 2.8 inch upper pulley swapped on to the 2.8 liter supercharger. Everything looks good. I'm gonna send it. Saw an increase in power to 724 wheel, 660 torque. Boost went up as well. Now if we switch back over to the data logs, we can see that we are locked in at 22 degrees of timing through the whole pull. Intake air temps are about 117, 115 to start with. They rise up here to 124. The intercooler is doing its job.
Sound disconnected.
At this boost level, the intercooler just doesn't have to do a whole lot of work, and air temps are fairly flat. So we got our 2.5-inch pulley swapped on. As far as I know, that's the smallest pulley that is ever ran on the upper on a 2.8-liter twin-screw supercharger. All our tuning data is coming across good. Dyno's good. It's about time to run it. So 761 and 730 torque. Boost is peaking at 26.34. We are pretty much off the boost chart here, just barely, 26.34. Made a all right horsepower number, 761, a very strong torque number, 730. Let me overlay the Gen3R pull with the same size pulley. And we can see that that 2.5 pulley picked up some nice boost on the 2.8-liter twin screw at 6250. We're making over a pound more, and we are making about 12 rear wheel horsepower more on the VMP supercharger. Everything is very, very similar throughout this curve. There's two big things that come to mind, and that is the peak horsepower. The VMP Gen3R just keeps going. The 2.8-liter looks like it's starting to fall out of its efficiency range, and it is making more boost to make the same power above, oh gosh, I mean, it's making more boost, just a tiny bit more the whole curve, and it's making the same power. And then above 6,000, you see that it takes more boost to make anywhere near the same power and then falls off from the VMP Gen3R. Let's go look at the tuning parameters, make sure all of those are consistent. We're locked in at that 22 degrees of timing. And let's look at our air temp 2. Air temp starts around 113, 22 degrees. We go up here, air temp hits 126, 127 at the rev limiter of 7,000, and we're 22 degrees. Air fuel's good, 0.82 lambda. Everything here looks good tuning wise. It just doesn't make the steam up top, and it's starting to make a lot of boost, and it's not doing a whole lot of, not putting a whole lot of power to the rear tire. So I'm gonna look at this data a little bit more, throw up some screenshots on the screen for everybody, and then we're gonna get outside the car and talk about it. So I got so excited to review the data that I forgot part of our testing procedure with the Gen3R was to make one pass, save the data log, and within 5 minutes start it up and make 2 back-to-back passes. So we are doing the exact same thing with the 2.8-liter. So we have the same picture, front to back, up, down, sideways, every way, into the 4th dimension. Send it. Pass judgment yet. I've got it in 4th gear. I'm gonna make another pull. This is brutal. Absolutely brutal. So the 2.8 liter had a pretty decent run. 761 rear wheel horsepower. And by the way, we've got the intercooler pump jumpered for all of this testing to keep things as consistent as possible. We did another run. We saw 735 rear wheel horsepower, and then another run, just basically the time to slow down and talk to you, and then put it in fourth gear and make another hit. We dropped to 698 rear wheel horsepower. 63 rear wheel horsepower lost in back-to-back pulls. And as you can see here, there's no strange business. It's the same pulleys, pretty much the same boost curve. It's just falling off monumentally. Let's switch back to the data logs and review those. So this would be our second back-to-back run. See, timing's at 22. Air fuel's good at 0.82 lambda. Air temps 127 rising to 140. And then if we switch down here back to the second pull. All right, let me give you some time indices. This run was completed at 42 seconds, and this next run was started at 1 minute and 8 seconds. So we start our downstream at 146 and we finish at 163. The tune is at 22, but is finally set to pull timing with the air temps going over 160. The timing drops to 20 degrees, and we are at 698 rear wheel horsepower. The VMP Gen3R never did this and did not gain IAT nearly as quickly on back-to-back pulls. Started out in similar places, same pulley size. Once again, we'll throw this data up on the screen for you, and you can review it for yourselves. Peak for peak, the 2.8 liter put up a good fight, but the VMP Gen3R really pulled through on the back-to-back pulls. And I might be willing to look the other way as far as the power losses or consider them an outlier if they just weren't so darn consistent, and if the twin screw wasn't running so much more boost already to make the same power as the TVS. All right, listen, if you look at this stuff, we don't build V8 engines that are not symmetrical. They're all freaking symmetrical side to side. We should not be building superchargers that are not symmetrical. Eaton has a patent on the TVS design. It's twin 4-lobe rotors. Everybody else is just trying to keep up with this male, female crap. I got 3 lobes on one side, 4 lobes on the other side. I got 4 lobes and 6 lobes, 3 lobes and 5 lobes. I mean, air doesn't want to have to do a different thing going through a set of rotors. With a TVS, it's not forced to do that. With a twin screw, it absolutely is. And one rotor spins faster than the other. So this whole crap about pulley size for pulley size, if you look at rotor speed for rotor speed, and let's just say you average the twin screw rotor speed, the fact that one side is spinning anywhere from 30 to 50% faster blows their whole argument out of the water about frickin' TVSs having to be spun faster to make the same power, more power. This dyno test, it was really never about size. It was about efficiency. Yes, one supercharger is a 2.8 liter, the other supercharger is a 2.65 liter. That's the least of my concerns. The most important thing to VMP is that we continue to produce better and better technology that performs better and better. Our Gen3R came on the market in 2019, set the bar for small displacement supercharged applications and the power potential of them. This is only a stage 2 VMP blower that we tested because this is a stock engine GT500. The stage 3 with Magnuson DFT technology goes even farther as you spin it faster. We've compared these two superchargers of similar displacements to prove a point, to disprove some of these erroneous PDFs and tests and comparisons that are out there from our competitors. And I believe we've effectively done that. We've shown you all the data, and their supercharger performs very well until it's spun up or ran over and over again, and then technology takes over. The more efficient 2.65 liter TVS rotor pack with, once again, I keep saying this, but the Magnuson DFT technology, it's just amazing. The Gen3R does not compare to any other 2.65 liter, which is one of the mistakes that the competition made. And everything that VMP and Magnuson does together will not compare to anyone else, because it will be, bar none, the best in the industry. Thanks for watching this video. Feel free to drop comments. I know there's going to be lots of them. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time.